Benghazi as Libya's rightful government after President Sarkozy met council delegates in Paris. More now on that from Tim Friend.
After being accused of being slow to react to the revolutions in Tunisia and Egypt, the French president has moved quickly to silence his critics and take the lead in reprisals against Colonel Gaddafi. Meeting representatives of the rebels at the Elysee Palace, he promised them immediate diplomatic recognition.
France has expressed its satisfaction about the creation of the Libyan National Transition Council. And after this meeting with President Sarkozy, I can say that France has recognized the Transitional National Council as the legitimate representation of the Libyan people.
The French plan is reported to include proposing limited airstrikes against key Gaddafi targets, such as his headquarters and a military airbase. There was no official confirmation from President Sarkozy's office, and it's a highly controversial proposal that would meet with strong resistance from many European allies, who are also wary of giving the rebel representatives diplomatic recognition at this stage.
That's a decision by a single government. I think it's better for us to listen to the stance of the entire European community.
The Elysee Palace says that Mr. Sarkozy is seeking legal authority to prevent the use of force by Gaddafi. It believes that jamming his communications would be a good start. Tim Friend, Al Jazeera, Paris.
Well, Franck Guillory is a French journalist and commentator who joins us live from Paris. Thank you for being with us. On this issue that's come out with not a huge amount of detail about the possibility that France would explore targeted bombing of Libya as an alternative to a no-fly zone, how do you think that would work?
Well, it's very difficult to say. I mean, what happened today, with first the recognition of the transitional National Council and then the announcement that France would put to the EU and NATO allies the idea of going for strikes. There's no sense of a real plan behind this, and there's no sense of French diplomacy trying to get back on the stage after very difficult moments over the past few months over Tunisia and Egypt, and is trying to go back on the international stage and to set the agenda. The question behind this is how strong Nicolas Sarkozy's plan is. Is it just the gesture, trying to appeal to the French tradition of protecting rebellions and being the country fighting for the human rights.
But is it, I mean, have they been briefing at all as to whether they think it would be France going it alone, or would it still have to be in the context of a UN resolution?
Well, it seems very difficult to imagine France going on its own. It would be absolutely unthinkable, and it would be probably inefficient. I mean, France will not go on its own, siding with the rebellion and trying to get rid of Gaddafi at a time when there's obviously negotiation on the international stage and lots of talks on the way. The idea behind this is probably Nicolas.
One thing I was going to put to you is one quote that's come from Bernard-Henri Lévy, who's apparently close to Sarkozy and who's just been on a fact-finding mission in Libya, is he apparently said that the president considered it too difficult, quote, to create a no-fly zone, and that somehow these targeted airstrikes would be less difficult to achieve.
Probably targeted airstrikes would be less difficult to achieve. The question is, what do you do after? What happened next? It's very good for Bernard-Henri Lévy, who is back from Libya, to call, again in the name of the French defense of human rights and.
Oh, we seem to have lost our line there to Paris. Sorry about that. And it's a shame. We wanted to thank our guest in Paris for his intervention there. Now, the US Secretary of State has also helped boost the cause of the Libyan opposition. Hillary Clinton says that she'll meet with its representatives in Washington and when she travels to Egypt and Tunisia next week.
Now, in Libya, at the same time, a dictator is denying his people that same path forward. And we are standing with the Libyan people as they brave bombs and bullets to demand that Gaddafi must go now without further violence or delay. Our diplomats are hard at work with our allies and partners, including in the United Nations, NATO, the African Union, the Arab League, the Gulf Cooperation Council, to isolate, sanction, and pressure Gaddafi to stop the violence against his own people, and to send a clear message to those around Gaddafi who continue to enable this horrific attack on his own people, that they too will be held accountable if they commit crimes against the Libyan people.
Now we're getting reports that police have opened fire on protesters in Saudi Arabia, injuring at least one person. According to an eyewitness in the eastern city of Qatif, gunshots and stun grenades were fired at several hundred protesters as they marched through the streets on Thursday night. The city has been the scene of several protests over the last 2 weeks. These images were uploaded from a social media website and appear to show a group of mainly Shia Saudis demonstrating on Wednesday night. The protesters are calling for political reform in the kingdom and for the release of political prisoners. Calls have gone out on the internet for a day of protest on Friday, but the Saudi government says it will not tolerate any demonstrations. Yemen's opposition has rejected President Saleh's offer to create a parliamentary system. He'd also promised to prepare a constitution for a referendum by the end of this year. But opposition members see that this is more as an attempt to hold on to power rather than a genuine call for change. Hashim Al-Barra reports from Sana'a.
It's a parliamentary promise aimed at ending Yemen's long-running political stalemate, but it's already received a rough response.
A committee will be formed to draft a new constitution based on separation powers. A referendum on the changes will be held by the end of this year. 2, we will move to a parliamentary system where all the executive powers will be transferred to the government, which will be elected by the parliament by the end of 2011. We will also put in place a decentralized political and administrative system.
The proposals follow previous concessions, including a pledge by the president to stand down in 2 years. Those too were rejected. But President Saleh's advisors stressed the historic nature of what's on offer.
I think this is an unprecedented announcement, and it's unique almost in the Arab world that the presidential system existing today will become a parliamentary system where the prime minister, who is elected by the people, will become the executive authority, and he will become 100% responsible to Parliament and all actions he does.
That didn't impress Yemen's opposition parties, who still insist on the president's immediate resignation.
The president's statement is merely empty words in an attempt to escape the crisis. We call on the president to come up with an initiative defining his view of the so-called peaceful transition in order for him to leave.
So the daily protests in Sana'a's University Square are likely to continue. The demonstrators believe President Saleh's downfall is just a matter of time. The president